Hi, and welcome back. I'm Jason.
And I'm Josh, and we're the Hardy Brothers Outdoors.
Thanks for those of you that are returning, and welcome to those of you that are new. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, if you're interested in the outdoors, you're at the right place. We like to hunt, fish, do habitat management, run the sawmill, and be outside as much as possible. We like to say the outdoors is always in season.
So you mentioned habitat management. That's exactly what this video is about today. And we're going to talk about the Habitat Oasis Project. So let me tell you what we're going to cover in today's video. So today's video is going to give you an overview of the property, the habitat and wildlife observations that we've experienced so far, the project mission, our partnerships that we've formed with a number of agencies that are helping us maximize and optimize our impact, a recap of what we've accomplished so far, and finally, what's to come next. So let's get started. So let's talk a little bit about the property that makes up the Habitat Oasis. We're standing in the middle of an 80-acre strip mine. And if you're not familiar with what strip mines are all about, back in the 70s, this land, they came in and they stripped off all the topsoil and any rock they needed to get down to a coal vein that they were able to mine from the surface. So they take that top layer of soil and rock, it's called overburden, strip it off, take the coal down, and then put it back on afterwards. So what happens is we end up with a terrain that they then help try to put back in some natural contours. But ultimately, the soil that we're standing on here, while it's tested positively, it's actually only about 8 to 10 inches deep. And so one of the things that they did in order to stabilize the soil to prevent erosion was they planted some vegetation. The vegetation that they chose back then, which they thought was a great idea, is Sericea lespedeza, which we now know is extremely invasive. And so this whole property was covered very thick in Sericea lespedeza. In addition, because nobody had maintained the property in over 40 years, we have a huge amount of autumn olive, which is another invasive that does very well in shallow soils and is spread very easily by seeds that are consumed, berries that are consumed by birds, and then the seeds are deposited everywhere. And you'll see autumn olive all over the property here. So as I mentioned, the soil depth here is roughly 8 to 10, maybe 12 inches at some areas. And the impact this has had on the overall landscape is we've got very few mature trees. The trees that have grown up here are trees that don't require a long taproot because right below the surface is rock. So what we've seen grow relatively okay out here, we've got dogwood, a few crab apples, a lot of American cherry, and some Virginia pine. So all of these are what you'd call volunteer plants, which means that the seeds have been dispersed here, but none of them have grown maybe 20 to 30 feet tall. And there's areas here where not a single tree stands. In most cases where there's trees, there's also autumn olive. And so as we continue to clear the autumn olive, we find trees trapped within those. So now that you understand a little bit about the property and the footprint of the property, Jason's going to talk to you a little bit about the wildlife and habitat observations that we've made thus far.
So 2017 was the first year that we hunted this property. And we had trail cameras out, we were keeping track of what was going on, and what we found was there was a lot of wildlife on the property. We were seeing deer, turkeys, rabbits, possum, coon, coyote, bobcat. We even got a picture of a feral hog. Lots of wildlife. But one of the things that I noticed was when the wildlife was on the property, especially the deer, they would cross the field but never stop to browse. They were just passing through. This was not a food destination for them. When I would brush hog, I noticed there weren't many birds coming out of the grasses and really not a lot of bugs. What I started to realize was that the habitat here just wasn't that good and we needed to make some changes. I started off small, just with a couple clover fields. What we found was that once we put in the clover fields, we started seeing groups of does there with fawns, mature bucks that were there in the summer feeding. Turkeys were consistently coming through the field. We found that by improving the habitat, the deer were coming in greater numbers. I felt bad at times as I was mowing things down. I felt like I was destroying things, but I created this saying in my head, I have to destroy habitat to improve it. Yes, there was habitat, but I felt like we could do better. So when I thought about what is better, I knew I wanted to do something bigger than just better. I wanted to create an oasis. And if you're familiar with an oasis, it is a lush green area in the middle of a desert. So I started looking at our property and zooming out on a map and saying, here we are and here's all the surrounding properties. What I want to create is a situation where as you zoom out, in the middle of all of these properties, in the middle of several square miles, is this habitat oasis that the wildlife all migrates to. Food, shelter, all of their basic needs are provided right here, and they have a reason to pass through and live in this area.
So now you understand why we've started the Habitat Oasis Project, and the mission is quite simple. To be good stewards of the land, leave it better than we found it, and to return the property to a native habitat oasis that wildlife love.
So when we started thinking about the Habitat Oasis Project, we knew it was going to be a big project, and we knew there was a lot that we had to learn. To do this, we were going to need help. So we started looking for help online. I looked at the Ohio Department of Natural Resources website and found resources for landowners. Through that website, I got connected with a biologist, wildlife consultant, and a forester. These individuals have come out and met with us a couple of times to give us feedback on what we're doing and advice on new projects. They then introduced us to individuals at the USDA. The USDA has helped us set up an EQIP contract, which helps compensate us for some of the projects we're doing. And they also provided an individual that helped with that feral hog. He came out, set up cameras, and did some work to try to get that hog. He then helped connect us with the Soil and Water Conservation District. They have programs we can take advantage of to purchase seed at discounts, to purchase trees at a discount, and to rent equipment for use out here on the Oasis. The great thing about all of these resources is they're available to us at no charge. So in addition to the government agencies, we've also found some nonprofits to work with. One is the Bee and Butterfly Habitat Fund. Their focus is on developing habitat for honeybees and monarch butterflies. They've been a great organization to work with. We recently connected with a biologist from Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. Haven't met with him yet, but he's going to come out, take a look at our projects, and see what we can do to make sure we're accounting for those species. The great thing about all of these resources is that they've been available to us for free. Free advice, free access to expertise. It's been huge in helping us learn and progress our project.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what we've accomplished so far. As Jason mentioned, we purchased in 2017. A lot of work's been done. One of the main things we started out with was a lot of brush hogging of the Sericea lespedeza. We'd brush hog it, then we would spray it, then we'd make sure we brush hogged it again in the fall before all the seeds dropped, so we'd break that seed cycle. That's been done a couple years in a row, and we've been able to then transform that habitat to the next thing. So I'm standing here within the beginnings of an orchard. We've got apple trees and pear trees planted. We've planted some blueberries. We've got a number of birdhouses that we've put out to try to attract more of the songbirds. We have the area that I'm standing in is also, as you can see, has been recently sprayed with glyphosate. This area is going to be part of that Bee and Butterfly Fund habitat. So this is part of the bee clover fields that we're going to have. We have taken out a significant amount of autumn olive on about a 3-acre section. Tremendous amount of effort that has been going into that. And we were able to do that as part of the EQIP program. Take that autumn olive out and turn it into brush piles to create habitat for rabbits, songbirds, nesting birds, and that has been very successful so far. We've got about 25 to 30 of those piles going already. As we mentioned earlier, some clover fields have been planted and we're seeing great success with those. And last but not least, we're in our second season of our native warm season grasses that we planted. So we're hoping to get those to come back stronger this year so that we can do a control burn next year. And so now I'm going to turn it back to Jason so he can take you through what's on the very near-term horizon for the Habitat Oasis.
So we are in the middle of habitat management season, and 2020 is a transitional year for this 10 acres that we've been working on for the last 3 years. We finally feel like we have the Sericea lespedeza under control enough that we can plant stuff that's not an annual that we don't plan on sacrificing in the fall. So the big thing we've got going on We have 250 trees, native trees, shrubs, and bushes that we're going to plant. Watch for a video that shows what species we selected, why we selected them for the Habitat Oasis, and the things that we did to try to improve our success rate on growing those trees. In addition, we're renting a no-till drill from the Soil and Water Conservation District. The plan for the drill is to plant some switchgrass. We want to provide some more cover. We're going to plant a native warm season grass mix. We're going to plant soybeans, which will be an annual, but they will help do some nitrogen fixing in the soil for us, and we'll plant some sunflowers. Later this year, we're going to do phase 2 of our bee and butterfly habitat fund planting, in which we will plant pollinators late in the year that we'll see next year. So a number of projects coming, a big year for the Habitat Oasis.
All right, thanks for joining. Hit that like and subscribe button.
Leave us a comment. Tell us what you're doing around habitat management on your property.
And we'll see you next time.